like to introduce our guest speaker tonight.
I got some notes, but hopefully I don't need to. This is the third time that Hugh has spoken to our organization, and we welcome him tonight with open arms. We're glad to have him. I know in the past, Hugh has always told me he doesn't like me to talk about him. So, try not to do that. I may talk a little bit about his family. But for all those people who don't know Hugh, I need to say that Hugh and Fanny are from Huntington Beach, California. They have two children, a son and a daughter, and Hugh is an accountant by profession. And that will be all personal information I give out to you. 3 years ago, I mentioned several of his other family members, and I'm going to mention 3 again tonight. He was not only from Moran, descended from the Morans, he's also descended from Green Clay. And Green Clay built Fairmont, which later became Whitehall. And Green Clay is buried in the farm next to Whitehall State Park. And one of Green Clay's daughters, Pauline Clay, married William Rose. And William Rose and Pauline built a beautiful home that we knew as Woodlawn, south of Richmond on the bypass and US 25. That home was taken down, brick by brick, transported to Oldham County, and we hope in the future that home will be put back together. Also, Hugh is
still nothing, only
Daniel Breck.
Tinsley, Michelle, Gracie, Moran,
Madison County lawyer,
and the pictures, a nice little picture from a baby.
Businessman. And he married Jane Briggs Todd, who is a aunt of Mary Todd Lincoln. And Mary Todd Lincoln is the daughter of Levi Todd, who was one of
So
the
this Sherry or Michelle.
And also one of the sons, their sons, Robert Levi Todd, was the first chancellor.
But it says we are viewing Sharon Mitchell's screen. Oh, now it starts.
And that's 3 families, 4 families, very important families in this county. And he's also descended.
I heard she's talking.
Martinez, Anderson, some other families that are here in this county. And he will talk tonight. His presentation is going to be on the Morans, the Andersons, and the Campbells, I'm sorry. And we are very glad, I'm very glad to introduce my friend, Hugh Anderson, Moran IV. Welcome, Hugh.
Thank you, Dean. Dean's become a good friend over the years, Dean and Vicki. I also want to thank your president, Sharon Graves. She's been very helpful. And also cousin, Sharon Mitchell. We share Clay relative. And also cousin, Vicki Whitaker. She's my cousin, 11th cousin, 3 times removed. And I'd also like to thank Sharon and Matt Hoff. Because they've been very generous with providing pictures for my talk. And they're very good friends, and they've also been great at teaching me about furniture and art and Kentucky history regarding furniture and art. So I'm very thankful to them. And also, I think we're going to find out that Sharon Graves and I are related as I get into my talk. As an introduction, I can honor the memories of my Madison County relatives, but I cannot do them justice. I read land deeds from 1805 on and letters, from early 1800s to 1880s. And I feel like I'm right there in the daily lives of my relatives, experiencing what they're experiencing. And with that in mind, here we go. The first slide, I was told you need to have something that's not boring to start with. And this is our granddaughter, and she's 21 months, she'll be due in January. And if you think about it, she's the future. And I think the American flag and the 4th of July background is very appropriate. So anyway, I wanted to have a nice slide to start off. I dedicate my talks to my twin brother who passed away 2 years ago, and he was Robert Breck Moran. And my talk tonight is about the Morans, Campbells, and Andersons and how they, come together in Madison County. And the Morans came here from Albemarle County, Virginia, in 1789, and then Hugh the First passed away at age 36 from tuberculosis
Little bit.
in 1886.
I don't,
That's where I
have
come
you
from.
seen anything?
This first slide is
Or
the
the
Barnett
cemetery,
Cemetery,
from a
Barnett
cemetery.
Moran Cemetery. It's at Highway 52, and it's on the Witt property, formerly Moran property. And when I first came back here in June of 2015, one of my goals was to find the gravestones of my third great grandparents, John Cleveland Moran and Elizabeth Barnett Moran. She went by Betsy. And I was told that they died the same night, August 20th, 1835. And I assumed that it was from a fever, like cholera. But then I later found out that 5 people died, that evening. The 5th person died 7 days later from injuries. So it didn't seem like it was cholera, but this is the cemetery, and you can see it was very overgrown in June. And then this second picture shows the inner wall. At one point, one of my relatives sent people to the cemetery to get gravestones to then flip upside down and use as stepping stones from her house to her kitchen, outdoor kitchen. And that caused a big stink in the family. After that, they built this wall, this inner wall. And one of the relatives buried in here is one of the 5 people who died as of this event, August 20th, 1835. And that's James Barnett, who's inside the wall. So what I was able to figure out, and I'm still trying to corroborate things, still trying to get more family Bibles, that I think that there was a buggy accident. There was a wedding meeting that night, August 20th, 1835. And it was Lucinda Jane Moran who was getting married to John Farthing, and 5 people were killed. And Sharon Graves is Farthing. So these are, it took me 3 trips to finally find the gravestones, and I did it. The real credit goes to my cousin Jim Ferguson. He was the one with the shovel that finally hit stone. We had to dig under about 5 or 6 inches of topsoil, and it was very overgrown. But we uncovered these gravestones, and I had a hand-drawn map from the 1960s from a relative who had been here with his wife, and then the hand-drawn map showed an elm tree, and that the gravestones were right next to the elm tree. So that's the elm tree at the top left. And it's the James Barnett Cemetery, and it's overlooking Silver Creek. John Cleveland Moran and Betsy Barnett Moran had 7 sons and 1 daughter. And once we uncovered the gravestones, even though they're 185 years old now, you could read really clearly that this one on the left says, in memory of John C. Moran, born January 1st, 1763, died August 20th, 1835. And that's John Cleveland Moran. And then right next to him is in memory of Elizabeth Moran, born February 3rd, 1765, died August 20th, 1835. So what happened was there was a wedding meeting that night, and people were going to the meeting, and I think there was a buggy accident, and the buggy either lost the wheel or broke a wheel, or a horse bolted, or the buggy went over an embankment. But 4 people died that night, and a 5th person died 7 days later. This is a picture from 2018 when we finally uncovered the gravestones. And it could be at one point they were vertical. I don't know. I've been asking about this, but they're side by side. And then this next Monday, we're going to put posts around it so you can see it more readily, and then a raised chain, so it's not hard to find in the future. So the people that died that night, there were 5 people who passed away. And what happened was, the Madison County Historical Society received an email in 2016, and Tom Black forwarded the email to me because there was a distant relative, a Campbell relative. Her name is Joy Feister, and she asked about whether anybody knew about that evening. So I've been in touch with her, and that's where I believe there was a buggy accident. That's what killed the 5 people. First 2 were my great grandparents, as I mentioned, and then Ezekiel Campbell and his wife, Jane Moran Campbell. Jane Moran was a sister of John Cleveland Moran. Both of them passed away. He was a Baptist reverend, and as I said, Jane Moran was the sister of John Cleveland Moran. The 5th person, and this is really interesting to me, was Colonel James Barnett, and he's inside that inner wall. He was born in 1750, and he was the older brother of Betsy Barnett Moran. And he was also the great grandfather of the bride-to-be, and he was 85 at the time he died. And he died from injury 7 days later, as I said. What's interesting about James Barnett is he was an aide to General George Washington during the Revolutionary War, and he was with him crossing the Delaware December 25th, 1776. And I read this in letters and I just stop dead in my tracks because it's so fascinating. But that keeps me buried there. Another interesting thing is, in trying to piece together what happened that night for the 5 people who died. You think about an Indian attack that didn't make sense, a shootout of a wedding that didn't make a lot of sense. And then one of the things I checked were the Presbyterian, Silver Creek Presbyterian Church records, and John Cleveland Moran was one of the founders in 1790 of the Presbyterian Church. And I looked in the sectional records that have been reproduced, but as is usually my luck, there were a few pages missing, and they were missing from 1834 to 1838, so there was nothing in there. But I keep checking these different sources, including family Bibles. It turns out that the bride was married. They delayed the wedding 3 weeks. She was married September 10th, 1835, and she was given away by her father, Barnett Coffee Moran. She then married a second time. This is the hand-drawn map that my cousin had from the 1960s. You can see the elm tree at the very top. And you can see people being labeled. You can see the inner wall. And then here's the description of the 2 gravestones for John Cleveland Moran and Betsy Barnett. It's a nice book that the Historical Society has about cemetery records in Madison County. And if you look at the bottom of the top section, it says Moran, John Cleveland, Moran was Barnett, and no dates of birth or dates of death, but I know what those are now. This also proves that they were married in Madison County in 1789. If you look at the last line, they were married in 1789 after both families had come here from Virginia. This is the bride, Lucinda Jane Moran Harding, and then later on in 1842, she married a Lucas gentleman. And so this is a picture that I have of her. This is also a picture of her later in life, and she married Joseph Lucas, and they married in 1842. And then this is her very late in life, Lucinda Jane Moran Harding Lucas. And this is interesting because this is the gravestone which I was able to get, but it says from the obituary that she passed away in Prairie City, Iowa. Prairie City, and I'm not sure if it's Iowa. There's a Prairie City, Oregon. I'm still trying to figure out the right state. But you'll see on the right it says Jane Lucas, and her, she was born in 1814 and she died in 1894. I mentioned the Campbells, and Ezekiel Campbell died that night, and also his wife, Jane Moran Campbell. You know, the Campbell home, this is courtesy of the Cox Collection and Sharon and Matt Cox. This is an aerial view of Town Road, and then the bottom right is the Campbell home. And Caldwell Campbell lived from 1804 to 1880. This is when you, as you're going up towards the home, it's called rolling view. And so it's a nice picture of going towards it. It's a federal style home. And late in the 19th century, they put on the New Orleans style front porch, the ironwork. And it had, you know, two rooms, there's a hallway in the center, room on the left, room on the right. And it's the Flemish style of bricks that they have there. And then there's an L that was on the side, and then the back, that this classic federal style home. Here's another picture. And one of the things I wanted to mention was, I think recently came across a letter from Hugh the First, my great grandfather, and he wrote it in 1876, and he wrote it to one of his uncles in Mississippi, and he was the letters about Caldwell Campbell and, you know, this home, and I'll quote: he, another uncle, another Anderson uncle, had some time with Mr. Campbell, and they were here together. Mr. C. Campbell is a good deal annoyed over a little irregularity they have discovered in the title to about 100 acres or more of land running right up to the house. Mrs. C. Campbell made no will, and hence he has only a lifetime interest in it. He is absent in the South now, trying to buy up the interest of the different heirs, of whom there are 150 to 175 in all, I hear. Some of them amuse themselves over the time his son, who's named Kirk, will have with them all someday. The old gentleman is not in the best humor with Kirk, though he allowed him to move back into the house. And so Caldwell Campbell died 4 years later. And I do a lot of estate work, and it's hard to get two people to agree on something. So 150 to 175 heirs, that's not something I would even want to think about. Here's the stone at the front that says it's, you know, the Rolling View Farm Otis Bundy now. And I just love the stone fences in Madison County. So that where, you know, the horizontal stones and then the stacking on top, I think it's beautiful. Another picture of the house. Also showing the New Orleans ironwork from late 19th century. And then here's a side view, so you can see how it was built on from the original house. And then this is from Madison County Rediscovered, and it just describes the home. Here's another Campbell home that was on the Campbell land. And the third Campbell home was on the Campbell land. And there's a Samuel Campbell Anderson Cemetery. So I'm both a Campbell and I'm an Anderson. And this is another book that the Historical Society has, and it shows, you know, who's buried in the Samuel Campbell Cemetery, which includes Samuel Campbell Sr. and his wife Mary, and it includes a lot of my relatives, Morans, Andersons, and both. This picture is courtesy of Matt Cox. He took it in the winter when everything's not overgrown. And this is a number of years ago. And the cemetery's not in very good shape, to say the least. But Jim Ferguson and I have paid a couple of times to have it cleared, you know, once about a week ago. And so the White House that you saw in the background, and then you see the road off to the right, and the cemetery. This is the gravestone for Samuel Campbell Sr. He died in 1821 at age 78, and his wife Mary died in 1829. This is again part of the same stone that, you know, has been broken. And then here's the gravestone at the flat part. Another house that's a family home in the area is called Dunsinane. after a Shakespeare work. And it's the Barnett Anderson home. It was built by William Barnett in 1821. And Earl Holmes lived there at one time. And a couple of people died there in a shooting, and the McCulloughs live there now. It's a beautiful home. In doing research, one of the books that was recommended to me by Matt Cox is a checklist of Kentucky cabinet makers from 1775 to 1859, and it was by Mrs. Wade Hampton Whitley or Edmund Whitley, and it was produced in 1969. So this is a reference book that I use because part of the wonderful heritage of Madison County in Kentucky is the Campbell furniture. And it says here that it was around 1800. What I'm going to show you, it's attributed to William Campbell, and it's important Kentucky legacy and heritage. Because like Mac will tell you, a lot of people think all the fine furniture came out of Philadelphia or Boston or maybe England, but that's not the case. There was very fine furniture that was produced in Kentucky. This is the dresser that I have at my house that I use, and it's from approximately 1800. It's a Campbell dresser, and there's 17 Campbell dressers known to be in existence. This one is the only one in this configuration where it has two drawers side by side at the top. And with Mac's help, I was able to restore the original handles with the rosettes and the veils, and it's something I treasure, and it's over 200 years old. This is the Campbell desk and bookcase. It's in the Cox collection, and it's one of the most famous pieces, I would say, of Kentucky furniture. And it's something that Sharon and Matt Cox pursued for a couple of decades, seemingly. And there was a survey that was done by the Museum of Early Southern Decorative Arts in 1977, and it included this desk. It's a bookcase on top and a desk down below. Here's another picture, and you see that the top is down for the desk, so you can see the drawers inside and the cubby holes. Here's a close-up after the restoration was done by Mac and Sharon Cox. They had it done, and you can see the tulip vines, and you can see the eagle with the shield, and just the incredible inlay work. And it's over 7 feet tall. Here's another picture that, again, courtesy of Mac, that shows the William Campbell group, and it's a group from 1795 to 1820, and he's showing off to the right the inlay design of the tulip leaves and the eagle and the shield. Here's at the bottom part of the desk, and then you see the graduated floors at the bottom. Is the same one that I have. The drawers just get bigger and bigger as you go down towards the bottom. And I should show you the bracket feet. You can notice the bracket feet is the same with the rest that I have. In 1988, there was an auction at Sotheby's, and this bookcase and desk was part of the auction. And I'll just read you a little bit of the description they had in the auction book. It says, rare federal inlaid cherry wood flat top secretary bookcase. In two parts, the upper section with inlaid molted cornice above an eagle and scrolling vine inlaid tympanum. A pair of hinged doors below opening to a shelved interior. The lower section with hinged rectangular lid centering on inlaid eagle and shield, opening to an interior comprising small drawers over balanced pigeonholes, centering a hinged prospect door opening to a small drawer. 4 graduated long drawers below, flanked by panels inlaid with a vase and trailing vines and a tulip on bracket feet. So that's part of your Kentucky heritage and something to be very proud of. And that was the Sotheby's in 1988. 1992, it was up for auction again. It's the one on the bottom. It was up at the DeCaro auction in Delaware. And then Sharon and Mac Cox were able to purchase it in 2012 after many years of pursuit and tracking. And it's a whole story that, you could spend an hour on telling you about it. But then there was an 8-month restoration, and this is one of the restoration pictures. This is another one of the restoration pictures showing the interior of the desk. And then after it was restored, this is a close-up of the tulip vine and the rest of the inlay. And then here's the corner, and then close-up of the tulip vine and another inlay. And then that's the top, and the very top has the eagle shield and also the top to the desk. There you see how intricate the inlay is at the corners, and you see the face at the bottom right, the tulip face. Close up the eagle and the shield. Again, that's the top of the desk. Top of the desk. And then there was an exhibition in 2014 at the Hedley Whitney Museum in Lexington for this desk and bookcase. And then in 2015, the desk and bookcase was exhibited at MESDA in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It's another picture of the same exhibit. And currently, this desk and bookcase is on display. It's been in Colonial Williamsburg in the Kentucky section for 3 years, and it'll be there at least until 2022. And in this same display, there's a Porter clay gauge table of the Cox collection. There's also a Jewett painting of Henry Clay, which is to the left of the tall clock. And it's the Kentucky section in Colonial Williamsburg. I haven't been there, but I'd love to go there. And whenever Max speaks there, it's always during my gap season, so it doesn't work out right now. So I mentioned that the Campbells, I've mentioned the Morans, and my second great grandfather was Nathan Montgomery Moran. He was the 4th son of John Cleveland Moran and Betsy Barnett Moran, and the father of Hugh. Born in 1803, died in 1874 at age 71. What's interesting was I tried to figure out his wife, Mary Jane Anderson. She was born in Alabama, so that's a long ways away at that time. And then later on, her family moved to Hazel Glen, Arkansas. So I was wondering, how did they meet? How did they get married? Well, Mary Jane Anderson, she was 25 at the time they got married, and he was 43. Well, her parents sent her from Arkansas to Madison County to get her away from a young man she was enamored with, and her parents didn't like that young man. So they sent her to Madison County, and after a 1-month courtship, they decided to get married, and they actually got married in 1846 in Hazel Glen, Arkansas. So that's how my second great grandparents met. And my cousin in Brooklyn has what she calls the Anderson paintings, but this is Nathan Montgomery Moran, and this is his wife, Mary Jane Anderson Moran. And just recently I came across a family Bible, and my sister took a lot of pictures, but she didn't take a picture of the title page. I thought, well, gosh, maybe it was a wedding gift. Maybe it would tell me about this 1835 accident where 5 people were killed. But it turns out, I found out later, that the Bible was given to them in 1859. And so it was 13 years after they got married. And it's 2 volumes, and their names are embossed, his on the front, hers on the back. So she was 18 years younger than her husband. And she died at age 56. This is her brother, Hugh Allen Anderson. So I'm Hugh the 4th in a straight line, but I'm at least Hugh the 6th as far as Hughes. And so this is Hugh Allen Anderson, her brother, and he was an attorney. He lived in Arkansas, and he was in the census in Arkansas, but he ended up in Madison County. This is another Anderson relative that I'm still trying to place. This is Lillian Anderson, but you can see at the right that the photo was taken in Lexington. Here's another Anderson, Elizabeth Anderson Moran. She's the wife of Robert Nicholas Moran. And my cousin Beth has a really cherished firearm from Robert Nicholas Moran, and this is his wife. And she died at age 58 in 1857. So that's Elizabeth Anderson Moran. What gets interesting is first cousins married. So you have Andersons married Andersons on in your head. This is my great grandfather. He was the only child of Nathan Montgomery Moran and Mary Jane Anderson Moran. He was born in 1849. This picture was from around the time when he was 16, and he got a pocket watch from his father that was made in London, and I think it was for his 16th birthday. And I have the pocket watch. I've shown it in previous talks. This is a picture of Hugh the First, and he was at Washington College, and he graduated in 1869. His father, Nathan Montgomery Moran, made him promise to build stone walls, those beautiful stone walls, stacking, dry stack walls around family property, which is at 1295 and 52, and also down to the 595. And there was 14 miles of stone hedges around the property. It was 1,500 acres. And when Hugh the First had gone, he went on a trip to Europe after he graduated from Washington College. He went to Stonehenge, and then he did a play on words, and he called the property Stonehenge from then on because of the rock walls. And Hugh the First was 6'6". He had a red beard, which I also used to have until it turned white. And he was known as Rufus as a nickname because of his red beard. This is a picture that I've always liked of my great-grandfather. This is one on a trip to Europe, and he was in the streets of Jerusalem in October 1873. And, he was 6'6", so, he's lucky his feet weren't dragging on the ground. And you can see that on the right, it's a picture, and it's in Hebrew and it's in English. And that's my great-grandfather. And he was actually studying German in Dresden at the time he got a telegram that his father was very ill and he couldn't get back in time. So his father passed away in 1874 before he could get home. He also described in one of his letters the River Jordan, and he was very disappointed when he saw the River Jordan because he said it seemed like Silver Creek was bigger than the River Jordan. This is the Richmond Cemetery, and it's the Moran plot. The only real estate I own in Kentucky is 11 spaces in the Moran plot and the Breck plot, the Richmond Cemetery. I'm actually very proud of that, and I make it available to my relatives. And Sandy and I will be there at some point. So Nathan Montgomery Moran, this is his gravestone, and you can see it's rounded at the top, and maybe some gravestones have like fallen, but these are still standing. And this is Mary Jane Anderson Moran, his wife and the mother of Hugh the First. She died in 1877. The reason I included this is I have the original telegram that was sent by Hugh the First, and it said, "Mother died this evening at 4:30, H.A. Moran," my great-grandfather. I just think it's wonderful to have these original documents. This is Stonehenge, also known by local people here as the Moran Castle. It was built in the 1860s and taken down in the 1960s. And it had 14 miles of stone hedges around it, 1,500 acres. They actually dug the clay on the site. You can still see the impression where they dug the clay. They built a kiln there and they fired all the bricks there. And when they took down the house, they used the same bricks to build a single-story house on the same site, and I'm told 6 other houses. It was very large. And the tower in the center, my grandfather wrote that he and his older brother went up in the tower when their little sister Pauline was dying of tuberculosis. And they figured if they went up into the tower, that's as close as they could get to heaven to pray for their little sister. This is another picture of Stonehenge at the other side. And this is a picture of my great-grandfather. And he died at age 36 of tuberculosis. And I think he was sick for at least 6 years before that. He went to Texas That's it, to try to get cures, to get a lot of different things to get cures. So if you think about it, you know, they got married in 1878, in January 3rd. And then in November of 1878, they had their first son, Nathan Montgomery Moran, and then Robert Brett Moran, after whom my twin was named. And then they had Hugh Moran the second, after whom I'm named. You know, they were only married for 8 years. They had 5 children during that time. But he died at a very young age. And you can see at the bottom, it's Louis Schlegel's a photographer, very famous photographer in Richmond. And then this is an oil painting that I have in my great room in my house. And it's Hugh the First. You can see he has the red beard like I used to have. And when I gave a talk a couple of years ago, one of my cousins, Ethel Curtis Pennington, he interrupted me during my talk, which was rather startling because I never met him before. And he said, "Oh yeah, that's my Aurelius Orevenum." And I regained my composure and continued the talk. And then I mentioned that this frame is a very elaborate frame. I was told it's a museum quality frame, and there's one almost exactly like it in the Oval Office in the White House. And then Ethel interrupted me again, and he said, "Yes, it was a package deal. You got the frame with the picture." So after I was here, I went home and I looked up Aurelius Orevenum, and sure enough, he was in the Lexington area around 1880. My great-grandfather died in 1886. He had been in Louisville, and he later on was in Ohio, and it all fixed. And I thought he's the first person who was able to identify the painting. He did it from 20 feet away on his body. I was shocked. This is the return address and label, you know, letters from my great-grandfather. It shows you what he was. He was the breeder of shorthorn cow, Shropshire and South Down sheep in Silver Creek, Kentucky. And then at age 23, Hugh the First was made a Kentucky colonel by then Governor Preston Westley, only 23 years old. So I have that framed in my office. When Hugh the First got married, he married Jane Todd Breck. And it was her mother, you know, Jane Todd Breck, who was the aunt of Mary Todd Lincoln. And Mary Todd Lincoln's father was Robert Todd. So Mary Todd Lincoln's grandfather was General Levi Todd, who's also my 4th great-grandfather. So this is Robert Levi Breck. As a young man, he went on to unite the North and the South Presbyterian churches after the Civil War. He also started Central University here. He founded it. He raised like $220,000 to start the university in 1874, which is a huge amount of money. He was the first chancellor and founder, 1874 to 1880. And then for breeding purposes, he moved to San Luis Obispo, California, to be near one of his sons. So he moved there for breeding purposes, and he lived another 35 years until 1915, and he baptized my father in 1913. So that's Robert Levi Breck as a young man. This is an oil that one of my cousins has. And then he married Martha Rhodes Breck. And Martha Rhodes, the daughter of Colonel William Rhodes, Pauline Clay Rhodes, and you know, Pauline Clay Rhodes was the daughter of Green Clay and older sister of Captain. This is an oil painting that one of my relatives actually lives in Cincinnati, named Brett Weigel, but he's never been to Richmond, so I'm going to try to get him to Richmond. I can come from Huntington Beach, he can come from Cincinnati. So he has this oil painting in his dining room, and everybody in the Breck family and the Moran family, they were born, married, died at Woodlawn. So in Woodlawn was the home. Green Clay gave the home to his daughter Pauline Clay, and Robert Rhodes gave the land to his son Colonel William Rhodes. And so the house was finished in 1820, and that's Woodlawn. So they were married at Woodlawn, and she died giving birth to their last daughter, Belbreck, in 1865. She died 27 days later, but he died after the childbirth. So this is my great grandmother. This is Jane Todd Breck, and she then became Jane Todd Breck Moran, and she was known as Jenny B, or Mom Moran, or Gingy. So one of my cousins goes by Gingy, and they share the same birthday, October 17th. So she was 25 when she married my great grandfather, and Hugh the first was 28, and they were married January 3rd, 1878. And what I found interesting too is that Walter Bennett posted the bond. And, you know, some people might not know what a marriage bond is, but it's kind of like a bail bond. You post a bond, you post $100, and Hugh the first that decided to take advantage of Jenny B and then flee town, then the person loses the bond money. But it's insurance that the person shows up and does the right thing by my relative. This is a picture of Jenny B as a young woman, and she's wearing a cameo brooch around her neck. It's a very nice picture, but you see in this next picture, that's the cameo brooch. And my cousin Gingy in Brooklyn has this. And I try to look up the dates, make sure everything worked. She has the original box, and there were silversmiths in Louisville, Kitts and Worming, and that's the original box for that cameo brooch. This is the Moran plot in the Richmond Cemetery. This particular monument is for Hugh the First, who died at 36, and Jenny B. Hugh the First died in 1886. His wife died in 1947, just a week before my parents got married. She outlived her husband by 61 years. And that, to me, that's just amazing. And she was a very strong woman. When Hugh the First died, this is the broadside, and I have the original. And this is dated May 20th, 1886. And the guardian for Jenny B. Moran and the three sons who survived after tuberculosis was M.F. Arbuckle, Millard Fillmore Arbuckle. And that's the great grandfather of Marty and Betsy, who were hiding in the West Room. And you can see this is the part 2 of the broadside. You can see the bottom right, M.F. Arbuckle. He was the guardian for my great grandmother and my 3 sons. And I've read so much, and I feel that he did a wonderful job taking care of my great grandmother and my grandfather and his 2 brothers. And it took from 1886 until 1920 to settle the estate and sell all the land. Obviously, quickly they were selling the livestock, and they were selling, butter and all kinds of stuff. It says here large quantity of bacon and lard. So they would sell some things quickly. I have a 4-poster bed at my house that was built in 1830 by John Cleveland Moran and Betsy Moran. And it's interesting, they were going to auction that 4-poster bed, which has 9.5-foot posts, and it's quite large. But my grandfather complained because he said he enjoyed playing on the bed and jumping up and down on it as a little boy, and he begged his mother to keep the bed. Well, there was a lady who bid 50 cents for the bed, and she was irate and she didn't get the bed for 50 cents. So it's pearl walnut, it's beautiful. The posts are a foot square at the bottom, really quite nice. Now the 2 younger children had died along with Hugh at the same time as Hugh the First. This gravestone in the Moran plot in the Richmond Cemetery is for Pauline Breck Moran, and my sister is named Pauline Breck Moran. She's one of at least 8 Paulines. And she died at 15 months in January of 1886, 3 months before her father died. So that was a very sad time. This is William Rhodes Moran. He died in 5 days in 1883, so he died very young. And I told one of my relatives about William Rhodes Moran passing away at 5 days, and they said, "Oh, That's not right. He lived into his 80s. And I said, well, this is who he was named after. And so this is William Rhodes Moran. William Rhodes, you see that from Colonel William Rhodes. He died at 5 days. This is just one page from the Breck Bible, and the Breck Bible lists all the births and marriages and deaths, and everything took place at Woodlawn. And you see Pauline Breck at the top left, and it was the home of Colonel William Rhodes and Pauline Claiborne. These are pictures of my grandfather, who's on the far right, Hugh II, and his oldest brother, Nathan, in the center, and Robert Breck Moran, the middle brother, on the left. You can see at the bottom, it's Louis label, so it was taken in Richmond. And you see the birthdays up there. It's a picture of my grandfather at age 7 in California, in San Luis Obispo, where the family moved after Hugh I died. His widow, Jane Todd Breck, and the 3 older sons moved to San Luis Obispo to be with her father, Robert Levi Breck. So this costume, that he wore to this fancy ball at San Luis Obispo, my sister still has it, and I remember it as a little boy, and either I was wearing it or my twin brother was wearing it. But anyway, with Mrs. Venable, her daughter Edna ended up marrying Robert Breck Moran, and that was my grade. In 1897, Mom Moran took the 3 surviving sons to Europe, including England and Norway. And this is Robert Hugh, the tallest, Robert Breck Moran on the left, and then Mom Moran, Nathan Montgomery Moran, and then my grandfather, Hugh II, on the right. But they're all tall people. My grandfather was 6'2", so you see they're tall. My grandfather, around age 16 in 1897. And this is when my grandparents got married in Redlands, California. And it was in June 7th of 1911. And my great-grandfather, Alonzo Hornby at the top, he wasn't at the wedding because he had run off with the widow Watson in Redlands, and he was banished from the house. But he then lived in New York City, and on the honeymoon, my grandparents visited him in New York City. This is wedding invitation. This is one picture I've shown before. This is my grandmother on her wedding day, and I found this in a library in Redlands. It's a very beautiful picture, and lots of, all the way down, my aunts and all the way down to my female cousins have worn this in wedding dress. This is the picture I just found a couple of months ago. It's upstairs in the house in Redlands, and it's just a different pose, but I did got a hold of my cousin a couple of months ago. Now, this is my grandmother on her honeymoon, and this has been for sales. And this is Oakley, which was the home of Lucas Broadhead and Sally Breck Broadhead. Sally Breck Broadhead being the sister of my great-grandmother. And the house was built in 1903. So this is on the honeymoon. And there's, I just found this picture a couple months ago, and this is my grandmother and my grandfather. So he looked really happy. And Lucas Broadhead took my grandfather aside and he said, instead of, following the Holy Grail and being a missionary in China and Siberia and Russia, I'll buy the property across the road for you. Just stay here, live here, and be a farmer. And I wish that had happened. And but as my father said, my grandfather was always following the Holy Grail. And anyway, it would have been fun if I could have grown up in this area. This is Oakley. The house was built in 1903. It's 8,000 square feet. It was sold a couple of years ago. And at some point I hope to get inside, but I've been around the outside. And this is another picture, and I believe it's on my grandparents' honeymoon. If you look at the car, right, you see a car to the left of the house. I think these are my grandparents, but I've never been able to ascertain exactly if those are my grandparents. I wasn't able to magnify the picture enough. But if you look at the car, and it was, it was used as a tenant home after my great grandfather died, and it's and the trees were all grown up. You know, 1911 makes sense, but I don't know. This is my father was born in Shanghai, May 30th, 1912. My grandfather was a missionary in China, he was secretary of the International YMCA. There's an American settlement in Shanghai, and that's where my father was born. You can see at the bottom right, it says Hangzhou, China. That's my father as a baby when he was born in China in 1912. Here's my father when he was born, and it's by his father, Hugh. My father was Hugh III. And so he was secretary of the International YMCA, Presbyterian minister, and missionary in China, director of the Siberian prison camps. And later on, he studied theology at Cornell before he retired. This is in 1913. They just come back from China, and this was at the baptism of my father. But if you look at this gentleman, probably think that that's his wife, that's his daughter. So that's Robert Levi Breck in 1913. That's his daughter, Jane Breck, or Jane B. That's my grandmother, Irene Harvey Moran. My grandfather, Hugh II. His brother, Nathan, who was a lawyer in San Francisco. His brother, other brother, Robert Moran, who's a famous geologist, and he started oil fields in Peru, Long Beach, California, right next to where I live, and also Utah. And this is also the wife of Nathan. And this is Edna, that is the venerable I mentioned before, the wife of Robert Breck. That's my father right there in my in the lap of Robert Levi Breck, and then these are his cousins. So Robert Levi Breck, you know, he lived another 35 years, I guess, from the good air that we used to have in California. And he died at age 86 in Palo Alto. This is Mom Moran, my grandmother. I just came across this picture last year, this oil painting, and I have a second cousin up in Oregon who shared this with me. This is Mom Moran, and this I just came across this picture a few months ago at an old age, and I wanted to describe that in 1924 she had lost her husband at age 36, and she had lost her two youngest children, and she had her three older sons who survived. And in 1924 she wrote a poem and she dedicated it to her three surviving sons. And this is the poem. The strongest human cord, an old protected map. Over my heart, there seeps a sad strain as I meet with that old broken toy train again. Yes, my attic has the home bin long of this favorite toy of my youngest son. It into my mind the tiny cottage brings, then in my heart the sweet low voice sings. For in that time I was wont to say, there's my God in my heart, a thanksgiving song all the day. For even though he had our one dear wee lassie taken, that was Pauline, and their good father, Hugh the first, to himself in heaven, we had not our home entirely forsaken, for he had to that home three dear boys given. And the song in my heart for the three boys fair was to our father who had entrusted them into my care. Their childhood, their boyhood, their manhood was mine to take, and from no responsibility was there for me any escape. The Heavenly Father who'd taken the husband away from the wife and had taken the angelic baby out of her life, he planned and he knew what he did then. He fitted that mother to build boys into men. And the strength of the love that he gave for that fight, it rose up to heaven and to God in its might. Do you think, oh man, you can spurn it? Would to God, into your soul, I could burn it. There is no love on earth, I doubt if in heaven, that's stronger than this. Same God's love to his own Son given, 'tis a beacon that lights the very pathway to heaven. Iridescent lighting that leaps on the waves, grinding your ships to their haven. And that's Jenny B. Moran in 1924. It's dedicated for three sons, and I think it's very fitting. You know, she's a very strong woman, lived to be almost 95. And like I said, outlived her husband by 61 years. That's amazing. This is Jenny Hugh Moran in later years. From the far right, this is from 1942. And you can see she's wearing, I think he's wearing that same opal brooch. And that's her son Nathan in the center, and his daughter, his son-in-law, and Nathan's wife. So that's 1942, 5 years before she passed away. A couple of years ago, I had a stone made in the Moran plot in Richmond Cemetery for Nathan Montgomery Moran. You know, he lived to be 74, and on his death certificate, it said he died from tuberculosis. So that was in his body, you know, all those years. But his ashes had been sent back to the Richmond Cemetery, and his grandchildren didn't even know it. I told him that I put in a stone to honor him. He died in 1952, so I never met him. I was born at the end of 53. But so now his gravestone is right next to his siblings, Pauline and William Rhodes. I did the close-up, and I did it in the same style as the other two, same, just the Nathan Montgomery at the top, and then son of H.A. of J.B. Moran, and then born 1878, died 1952. This is my father, that's Hugh first. This is a photo from the Pasadena Bar Association in 1978. He was a lawyer for 40 plus years in Pasadena. And then I added a picture of my mother. I thought, gosh, I'm not even honoring my mother. So this is my mother when she married my father in 1947. And her father was also a Presbyterian minister. So both of the fathers were Presbyterian ministers. And he had a congregation in Alhambra, California. My grandfather, being the person he was, he invited the entire congregation. So there were 600 people there at the wedding. And I went there with my mother later on, and she said, "Oh yeah, by the way, your father and I got married here." Anyway, this is 1947. She married my father. And then this is when she looked even happier when she married my stepfather. And that was in 1976. And she married her first cousin, Donald Hugh Weber, and their fathers were brothers. Anyway, those are two pictures of my mother. And then this picture, my brother and I, obviously we're twins, we're fraternal. And this is the only picture of me where I'm not crying. You can always tell because if somebody's crying, it's me. And I'm on the right, so I put this picture here, and this would have been in 1954. And we were either waiting to be fed or had just been fed, I think. A really sweet thing was done by Vicki Whitaker after my brother passed away 2 years ago. Unbeknownst to me, she made my brother a posthumous member of the Boonesboro Society. And our family is linked to 4 families that were with Daniel Boone and his family in Fort Boonesboro: the John Andersons, the James Anderson, General Greenplay, and Colonel Robert Rhodes. Colonel Robert Rhodes was the father of Colonel William Rhodes. So my brother died. He was a big history fan and World War II fan, and he died on D-Day 2 years ago, June 6th. So it's dated the day he died, and it's posthumous, and it's my brother. So what I did is, his son has the same name. So I had a friend with Kentucky wood from the mid-1800s, and I gave it to his son, and then Vicki gave me another one. So anyway, I wanted to thank cousin Vicki Whitaker, and she's been very helpful with the genealogy, and her husband Dean's been very helpful with the history, and also introducing me and trying not to say anything about me personally. And also Sharon and Matt Cox and the Cox collection has been wonderful for educating me. And I'm one of many people who just wants to be around Mac and listen all day long. So we have lots of nice photos, and you know, he's the one who provided me the photos of the Campbell desk. I also wanted to thank my sisters and cousins. They've now realized that I don't have nefarious intentions. I just want to connect dots. So they're sharing oil paintings, silver, and watches and different things with me, which is wonderful. And I will also thank Sandy. She's been very tolerant of my passion for family history. And sometimes she said, you know, Hugh, you can't always just live in the past, but I think when I get home from work, it's a really nice escape from reality. for the evenings and the weekends. And then to end it, again, I want to show you in the future. You know, we talk a lot about the past, but we're hoping that our young people will be our future and that they'll be patriotic and they'll respect their lineage. And so, again, this is our granddaughter, Tim. So thank you very much. That's it.